It's fair to say that neither Paris Saint-Germain nor Leo Messi look back on the 2 years that he spent at the club with any kind of fondness. He was seen as the guy who was going to help PSG get over the line in the Champions League.
Some would say a nightmare in Paris, wouldn't they? Here are Messi's numbers while he was in the French capital. A couple of seasons played there for PSG, 75 matches in total. He scored 32 goals, 34 assists and won 3 trophies. As we welcome you along to Scoreline, Adam Hunt and Chris Wittyngham here in the Golazo Network studio. It is an interesting conversation. When you look at it overall, how do you remember Messi's time in Paris?
I remember it as the end of the stars era at Paris Saint-Germain. I think everyone, after Messi signed and it didn't quite come off, came to the realization that it is now time to move on to something else. After that period, Neymar left. After that period, Messi left. And now PSG are a completely different thing. But I think it is now a recognition that you cannot just keep throwing stars at the problem until it works. And now we're seeing in that post-Messi era, there is that level of success. Obviously, you win tons of games in Liga, but ultimately it comes down to what can you do in the Champions League. They get knocked out the first time in the round of 16 by Real Madrid. They get knocked out the second time by Bayern Munich, and fairly convincingly as well by a 3-0 aggregate score. It ultimately comes down to, at PSG, things are measured by performance in the Champions League, and not only did they not win it, they came nowhere close. And I think that ultimately is what defines eras at PSG since the Qatari ownership came in, and it just wasn't anywhere near good enough.
There was also more to it than that. I don't think he was particularly comfortable in France as he had been in Spain in his time at Barcelona. There was other elements to it. Off the pitch, he didn't seem particularly happy there either. And I think that all of that added together meant that you weren't getting the Messi on the pitch at PSG that you did at Barcelona.
Yeah, let's also recall that when Lionel Messi left Barcelona, it is his first time outside of that environment. He'd been there since he was a teenager and had been at Barcelona for so long. We have a quote, actually, about how unhappy he was at the time. There were 2 years in which I was not happy. I did not enjoy myself, and that affected my family life. I missed a lot of my children's lives at school as well. He just wasn't happy his entire time there. And I think he didn't want to leave Barcelona in the first place. Let's remember that there was an idea of him maybe taking a €0 salary just to stay at Barcelona because of how bad the financial situation was. He was in tears to leave. He ultimately, his heart is at Barcelona, and he never wanted to leave in the first place, and things had just gotten so bad that he had no choice. He had to find another club and someone who can afford to pay the kind of salary that Lionel Messi commands. And so I think the entire time he's carrying with him this idea of, do I even really want to be here? Why am I here? Does this even work with Mbappe? Then there's the interpersonal dynamics of Mbappe and Messi. There was this idea out there that Mbappe didn't like the fact that Messi commanded so much attention and commanded so much of the commercial interest as well. It just wasn't a fit, and it wasn't a fit from day one, and ultimately there was huge disappointment from Messi's end that he wasn't at Barcelona anymore, and I think that could have affected. Now you look at those numbers that we showed you, 32 goals and 32 assists over 2 seasons, not terrible, but it wasn't Messi level, and it didn't really show in the Champions League, which was the ultimate measurement.
Absolutely. Let's get some more context on this. Here's our French correspondent Tom Williams on how Messi's remembered in Paris.
It's fair to say that neither Paris Saint-Germain nor Leo Messi look back on the 2 years that he spent at the club with any kind of fondness. He was seen as the guy who was going to help PSG get over the line in the Champions League for the first time. That obviously didn't happen, and he ended up getting booed and jeered by the PSG fans at the Parc des Princes, along with Neymar, seen as a symbol of this kind of Galacticos project that hadn't worked out. We know that he didn't want to be at PSG in the first place. He cried when he left Barcelona. He struggled in his first season at PSG, only scored 6 league goals, which was his worst return in absolutely ages. He had COVID. He was living in a hotel with his family for a little while. Second season went better. He won the World Cup with Argentina halfway through. Finished with 2 league titles, but those weren't the trophies that he was brought to Paris to win. And he left the club under a real cloud, having been suspended and fined for an unauthorised trip to Saudi Arabia. He's since admitted that he wasn't happy in Paris. He didn't enjoy his time there, and that didn't go down very well at PSG. So there won't be much love lost between PSG and Messi when their paths cross again in Atlanta on Sunday.
I'd forgotten about the COVID element to it, because it was in that period. So it must have been very difficult for him, I mean, for anybody to be in a new city, a place that you're not perhaps as comfortable with your family during that difficult time as it was for all of us. If we look at this game specifically for PSG against Inter Miami, how much does it hurt the season? I know for a lot of European fans, they would say, oh, well, this is only the Club World Cup. We've won the Champions League. Who cares? But would it be a damaging factor if they were to go out at this stage against Inter Miami?
I think there are competing interests here. So I think on the one hand, you have a Paris Saint-Germain that did ultimately win the competition that they seek to win, which is the UEFA Champions League. They've been after for 15 years. They finally got it. There is almost this kind of, well, let's all go out and have fun now. And then you got to play internationals and you got to go play the Club World Cup. I said, wait, we got to do that, but we just did the thing that we wanted to. But I think on the opposite side, I really do think that, first off, the Champions League winner usually goes on to become the champions of the world. They put that gold badge on their crests, and it's a big status symbol for a club to be champions of the world. And I really do think in this new format, there are a lot of clubs, especially what you would call the project clubs, the clubs that have wanted to sort of upset the major European hierarchy, that you're right up there and competing for all the major competitions. And I really do think that there is a desire of the big European giants at boardroom level. It might not be shared by their fans, but I do think that they want to be crowned champions of the world. They want to be the first ever winner of this tournament, because you can very easily see it becoming, over the course of time, one of the big prestigious competitions to win. It might not be that right now, but I think it will be in the future. And so I think that even though they've already won something, I think if they were to lose here, especially in this game, I think it would be something of a big disappointment for the club to not be able to wear that gold badge on their shirt for the next year as the champions of the world, not just the champions of Europe.
From the PSG perspective, how do the two sides match up? What are they going to have to do to try and beat Inter Miami?
Well, I think it'll be fairly obvious that we will see Paris Saint-Germain with a lot of the ball. We'll see Inter Miami very little of the ball, one would assume. And I think it ultimately comes down to, can you continue to break down teams that are defending low, that aren't terribly interested in possession? And can you limit the moments when Miami do have the ball of Messi magic? That ultimately is the number one thing to do against Inter Miami. But you would assume, based off of the quality of possession that they have against the very best teams in the world, that they really shouldn't have too much of a problem dispatching a side like Inter Miami. That being said, we have already seen once in this competition, as evidenced there by the graphic on the screen, that Botafogo made life difficult for them. And that maybe on the different nature of the pitches that you have here in the U.S., obviously this game will be indoors at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, where you're laying grass over turf, and it's not quite as zippy and quick as the pitches that they're used to, that the play has been a little slower from PSG at this tournament. And I think that might have affected them a little bit, but it's hard to see a manner in which they are genuinely slowed down. I think other than Seattle, this will be the second worst opponent that they will have faced in this competition. And you would imagine that with the quality that they have, as long as they're picking their best team, and as long as those guys give anywhere near their best performance, that they should take care of this game fairly comprehensively.
Rightly say, they have got plenty of quality going forward, but they are, it seems to me, missing Dembele a bit more than I expected. I thought, if you take Dembele out of this side, they've got so many options going forward. You've got Barcola, who was coming off the bench for the latter part of the season, and plenty of other great attacking players, Doué and all the rest, that they would be able to cope without him. But they seem to kind of be missing what he offers, not just in terms of what he does with the ball at his feet, but also the outlets that he offers you going forward.
And I think Paris Saint-Germain are reduced to playing more conventionally when they don't have Ousmane Dembele up front. They play Gonzalo Ramos or some other center forward-like player in that role. They don't have someone who's similar, who has all the qualities of a winger and a very technical and creative player, playing through the middle as kind of that false nine, but can run all over the pitch. And in some ways, I think you saw a lot of PSG opponents completely baffled by where to go, who to defend at where, when to send center backs forward, when to keep center backs. And I think when you come up against a Gonzalo Ramos-led team, it's a little bit easier to identify where everyone is going to be, because Gonzalo Ramos thinks like a striker. He's trying to occupy striker positions, and Ousmane Dembele just doesn't. And so I think that might be the only thing that makes him a little bit more conventional, is how I would describe it, is that without Dembele, they become just kind of like any other team, whereas we saw for the last 6 months of the year with Dembele up front, they were just the best teams in the world couldn't cope with all the different options from all the different angles that they were coming from.